Okay, welcome back, everybody, to episode 3 of this series of podcasts, National Knockout Classics. Episode 2, for those of you that haven't listened, which probably quite a lot of people out there, it features James Brown talking about the games from the 2003 season, the Bridgie game, and also his game in 2010. It's a really good listen. But today, we've got a very special podcast because we've got 3 guests. 17 years ago, Bath got to the final of the National for the 3rd time in 6 years, and it has been a long wait to get back. So fortunately for us today, we have 3 of the people that were at the centre of that cup run. All the way from Australia, we've got Ben Staunton. How you doing, Ben?
I'm good, thanks, Letty. And you?
Yeah, I'm all right, mate. Might know several other names might come up. We'll just let that flow. We've got from Troy Vegas, Tom States.
Hello.
How you doing? And then obviously captain in 2003, the mercurial Mike Brearley type. That is Greg Brown. Greg, how you doing?
I'm not sure about that.
I don't know, mate. Looked at the stats, but we'll get into that as we go. So how Brownie, we'll start with you, mate. How's the whole isolation thing working out for you at the moment?
It's it could be better, couldn't it? It's a bore, but you know the weather's helping, so it's not too bad.
Yeah, I guess depends what you mean by helping. I suppose less people outside, the better. I guess. Datey, you enjoying the sights and smells of Trowbridge on this hot, sunny weekend?
Well, yeah. Luckily the garden's doing all right. So we've got a bit of space for Isla and Archie because it would be without a garden with them right now. 3 and a 5-year-old, it would be hard going. Put it that way.
Yeah, I don't feel for the people in blocks of flats, and I guess Ben Staunton over there in Australia has probably not got too many issues, have you, mate?
Oh, look, we're not as bad as you guys, I don't think, on lockdown. So the dog gets a good walking majority of the time, about 20 k's a day. So walking along the water, can't complain.
You're walking 20k a day, are you?
Yeah, about that with the dog. Walk to Bondi, North Bondi and back. It's about, a good 10 or so k. So
I'm trying to work out when Ben's putting on an accent or not.
He's got a hell of an accent.
There's some sentences where it sounds like you're putting it on, and others where you, it gets turned down a little bit.
Sorry.
You're from Australia. Living in Australia.
So, guys, if we sort of try and rewind the clock then as best we can, back 17 years, which seems like a ridiculously long amount of time ago. It was my first year sort of being part of the club, and the cup run was very much sort of a central focus for everybody, it felt like. Greg, how do you feel about your team, the makeup of your side going into that year?
It came off the back of a good year before where we came second to Corsham, and I felt that over the winter I think we had a strong probably 14 or 15 players. It was a tough year. I mean, with the fact of having to play Saturdays and Sundays and play at a good standard all the way through the year to win games, having to win a game in the knockout was tricky, I think. And it certainly had an effect on me at the end. With my love of cricket, I guess. But the makeup of the team, I felt was balanced. And we had a good squad of players.
Yeah, sort of selection issues, I guess, when you're pre-season as a captain, you always feel like you're going to have 16 players to try and fit into 11. It doesn't often work out that way, but it seems as the cup run went on, you chopped and changed a lot. Was that just an evolving situation or availabilities or what? I think
availability comes into it. I think there were certainly some issues throughout the year. Well, the biggest one that stands to mind, well, 2 big ones that stand to mind. Obviously, first one was in the league having to not pick Stu Barnes. That was one of the hard ones. And then Statey played and bowled beautifully the week when he was on tour for the MCC. So he didn't play, and that was a tough one. And then later on in the cup run, not picking Mark Thorburn was tough.
I guess we'll talk about that a little bit later.
Yeah, thank you. I thought you might bring that one back up.
I remember that very well, Matt.
Yeah, well, I'm sure we'll get onto that as we go on. Statey, you must have been 17 at the time. What was it sort of the young pup in that dressing room?
Well, I think overall at that age, I was thinking about it the other day. Is that it was all about the weekends. That was all it was about because I was at school and I was doing my A levels, and that's fine. But Saturdays and Sundays, I used to just live and breathe for every week. Would just be looking forward to Saturdays and Sundays. I used to absolutely love it. I think I probably had a year. I'd had a year in the side with you, Greg, the year before that cup run.
Yeah, I reckon you were.
You were, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I just think I just used to absolutely love being part of that group. At the age I was at, that was very much that meant everything to me. I think I'd have run through brick walls for every single bloke in that side for probably a good 3 or 4 years. That Saturdays and Sundays, that was just everything. So that year was just another one where Bath Cricket League and Cup that's what it was all about for me at that time.
And
so the year, sorry, Robin, the year before, with the year that you're talking about, Steve, I had to then have to drop another Bath legend in the sense of Ian Shrubsole, for you to make your debut, and that was a tough one as well. That was really hard because obviously Shrubby was one of the best bowlers that I faced when I played for Lansdowne and then played with when I played for Bath. So to have to do that
for you, Greg, was that kind of combination of Gloucestershire being in the picture and trying to do the best for Statey's development, or was it kind of purely a kind of who's in the best form?
I think if you a lot of the time you go on past performance, I guess. So in that sense, we'd have already gone with Shrubby. But I think that obviously Statey was showing a lot of potential, bowling well for Gloucester, so I had to pick him.
I think the other factor with Shrubby though, Greg, was that Shrubby was obviously changed his job as well, with working a lot of Saturdays with Kingswood, which obviously gave opportunities like Statey. And obviously the early part of this cup runs, Shrubby actually played the early rounds in the cup, which was obviously a massive bonus to the side as a whole. So, it was one of those sort of things that balanced out quite well in the end.
It was, but I hated Captain Shrubby, even though he's a top bloke. I hated Captain. Every time I took him off, he wouldn't speak to me for the rest of the day. It's not fun.
Well, I guess we're all kind of lucky enough to have had a go at the reins at the club, and I'm pretty sure we think about a couple of those characters. There's definitely always a couple, but for you Staunce, I guess at that point in time, you were very much the sort of club's talisman, if you like, with the bat. I mean, you'd been around for a while, played in 2 finals, had some success. Did you feel like you had sort of the responsibility, if you like, in that middle order, you and
the funny part about the 2003 aspect of being the talisman or whatever, what would I have been? I would have been 17. I would have been 25. Yeah, I mean, so I know I'd been in the club for a little while, but it was great. Like the one major thing about 2003 was Will Murray was allowed to play.
Yeah.
And I always remembered how well Will always supported it, but never was allowed to be part of it. And I just think being able to play cricket like we did that year with someone like Will, who was obviously one of my good mates, cricketing wise, was just something even extra special, I think. So
I wonder if that gave us a bit more of a boost than we realised, maybe, because Will had watched it for so long and we'd probably thought about the idea of, imagine having a cut run with Will involved, and then suddenly kind of it all came together and suddenly he was eligible. And so that might have been the difference in some respects, because that was just a massive boost, because it's something we maybe thought would never happen.
Yeah, I spoke to AK actually in the first episode of this series, and he said that playing for Bridgie in 2003, you really kind of felt like you were maybe 15, 20 runs behind before the game started, just by looking down the list of names. And I guess if you've got someone like Willie, to open innings, it makes such a difference, doesn't it?
I think I think that was the main thing. You going on Sunday with the same team as you went in on Saturday. I think that made a big difference. And obviously, having somebody as good as Will was at the top of the order would set the theme for the day. He was he was ahead of his time in the sense of T20 cricket. He would go hard at the ball even in 45, 50 over cricket.
So we get to the start of this cup run then, round 1, where Malmesbury, and by the looks of things, a pretty straightforward game.
I can't remember that game.
To be honest, mate,
all I remember is Will just hitting 6s for fun into the fence at Malmesbury.
Yeah,
like it was just hilarious.
It's funny because you looking through the different games on this cup run, sort of comparing it to runs that we've had, in the past when I've been involved. It always seems like the first round always seems to be kind of one of these sort of massive one-sided sort of games. I guess Malmesbury at the short end of it, but that wasn't the case, Greg, in round 2, was it, mate?
Remind me.
Oh, actually, no. Hang on a minute. I can't remember.
I remember round 2 quite well because Brownie didn't play.
Yeah, exactly.
That was it. Swansea.
Yeah, you drove the minibus, but you were ill.
Swansea was round 2.
Yeah.
That felt like I remember Swansea vividly, and then I drop a few games in memory, but Swansea is stuck with me vividly.
So I think Swansea was the catalyst of that run because everything that happened on that day. Yeah, because you did well. In all fairness, I remember we were in the field. I reckon the first 5-8 overs, they were going at about 10 and over. They were just smoking us.
It was flat. It was flat, wasn't it? The deck at Swansea had a bit of pace and bounce. And I remember me and Thorby, we went the distance to a few overs early on.
Tom State 5 overs for 35 and Thorby 5 overs for 37.
Never came back that day.
but then Willie's got 2 for 18, so it can't have been that flat, mate. And obviously Shubby and Staunce is in here with 2 for 30. So
you should have seen the grenades I was bowling. So
I have seen it. What I want to know is, obviously you've bowled 8 overs this day, and Greg's not captain. So who persuaded to give you the ball on this game?
Well, I was captain.
It all makes sense.
Exactly,
mate. Bowling yourself quite a lot when you were captain.
The thing is stuck in my brain was because I was 17, so I hadn't played a lot of other grounds, and so getting to Swansea, and it felt like a little bit of a stadium. It had like the tiered seating. Staunce let us go and warm up right on the other side in front of the rugby stand, like under the rugby posts. And again, as a rugby fan, I just thought that was wicked. Then going up the stone steps up to the change room. For me, I hadn't played at many grounds like that, and I thought it was wicked.
But I think that's part of the magic of the cup, though, isn't it? Because you play against teams that you've never played before, grounds you've never played before, and as the rounds go on, every game just feels a little bit different, doesn't it?
I mean, the Swansea thing was obviously as a county ground, and it was a good deck to play on, even though we went round the park a little bit early doors. I think the highlight for me was there was a couple of key things. Will Murray's opening stand where he was trying to pump the opening bowler. He came off the longest run ever.
He had a bit of gas though. He had some gas. They had a bowler. Yeah.
That's why I didn't play.
And Will tried to hit him again. Tried to hit him into the sea and got caught at long off. And he broke his bat. He walked off with his bat in his hand, broken. And then all I remember is as we got closer to the total, I think Will broken his helmet or beaten up his helmet, and he was riding it around in like a horsey fashion, his purple helmet that he'd been bashing for a long time. It was just, I just don't know. It was just such a funny day. I'm just like, I don't know what happened, why that started off the catalyst of where we went to. But
I think you're right, Staunch, because I think knowing it's round 2 is weird. Because I remember at the end of that game, we were absolutely buzzing, like we'd won like a quarter final, because it was quite a tense game. I think it ebbed and flowed quite a lot, and it was quite tight towards the end, and we lost some wickets. But I remember, like in the changing room afterwards, we were absolutely buzzing, and we definitely had some beers on the minibus journey back.
Well, you wouldn't have had a beer, would you, Stacey?
No. I think I remember sitting next to Staunch or Hanks and ended up having a few. You
wouldn't sit in the front this time, were you?
I really remember that Swansea game as being as though it was a really, really big fixture.
Yeah, well, I mean, looking at the scorecard, obviously, Staunce, you've played a massive hand. Statey, 17 coming in with sort of 20 or so to win. Do you remember kind of what your thought process is at that point, or are you just trying to give the strike to Ben, or what's he thinking?
I actually remember absolutely nothing about that innings. And I remember loads of stuff like outside the pitch of that game.
Yeah.
But I couldn't tell you any balls I bowled, any shots I hit, like how it felt when I was in the middle. I genuinely can't remember it. So when I saw the scorecard, I was like, oh, great, I got a few runs at the end. But I genuinely can't remember anything.
Staunce, you've obviously played, plenty of big knocks for the club. Where does this one rank, do you think?
I'll be honest, I was a bit like Stady. I don't really remember. I just remember the whole game as a picture. I just remember we were under the pump early doors and we actually got off to a real decent start. And yeah, just sort of like, in all fairness, it was quite comfortable. It was tense, but I felt like we were sort of in control where we were going with the bat. I just hated when like James Brown or Stady came to the wicket because they just became runners. So they just freaking run me to the ground. So like I said, I remember so many little things about the preamble and the aftermath of that day. I think that was a real, sticky moment of going, okay, all right, we've gone to Swansea with a decent side. We were lucky that Shrubby played and, we had a couple of bonus players and obviously Browning not playing, only finding that in the morning. And I think that was why it was quite a exciting dressing room afterwards as well.
So you win by 4 wickets, and next round, the group semi-finals at Westlands, as it was then, and Greg back in charge of the side. Tough game that day. You can listen, mate, if you like. It's fine.
Listen. Have you got the figures there in front of you?
What do you want to know, Greg? I tell you. Well, all right. So here you go. Yeovil, Westlands as they were then.
Yeovil.
It looks like a rain-affected game because they've got 159 for 5 off 39 overs, and Gordon Swinney gets us home. By the looks with people to spare.
I don't remember it.
Right. My memory of that game, and someone would tell me again. I don't remember anything on the pitch. I think Willie Murray took his kit in a bin liner.
He did it. He did it to Swansea as well.
I remember him getting off the minibus. It's probably raining, and he just like his Santa's sack, and he's walked in, and he was one of our best players, and he looked like an absolute finisher.
Bats and pads and helmet and all that stuff.
Yeah. He threw it all in
the
black bin.
He had his hand and over the end of the bin liner. I tell you, the only thing I remember about going to Westland or Yeovil is just how they just tried to drag us down to a level. We used to sort of sometimes struggle with that, with somebody tried to intimidate us, or I don't know, just the chat they had. That's the only thing I remember. I just remember that we were obviously really struggling. Swins dug us out of a hole that day, but yeah, it wasn't a pleasant day. I wouldn't say it was one of those sort of things we just scraped through. When thank God we were out there, sort of thing. Just get on the bus and go home.
Greg, I will ask you this question. Hopefully, you'll have an answer next time. But how good a player was Swins?
Look, we had some really, really good club cricketers. I mean, and Swins was right up there to be able to bat big hundreds. And there was times when he just felt that he just scored hundreds all the time. And a lot of the time he didn't destroy an attack like Willie or Ben would do. But he would just noodle it around, and then before you could notice he was on 50 or 60 and winning games for you. But to be able to turn to him with the ball and to have control. I mean, he wasn't a massive spinner of the ball, but to have that control in the middle order was fantastic because you had someone like Simon Gwilym who would spin the ball massive and bowl probably bad balls, but Swins never did, and he was brilliant in the field. You stick him back with a point, and he would stop balls all day. He was brilliant, fantastic.
Guess there's quite a lot of different stories as we go through this cup run, but looking at the scorecard, the 61 not out he got that day looks like that was a difference between the two sides. Afterwards, at what stage during a cup run do you feel like you're kind of getting in towards the business end of the competition?
I think for me, it's always once you've won the regional final, so you start the regional final, then you start playing against teams that you don't normally play or haven't played against. It starts becoming more exciting, and for me, it becomes a lot more serious, I think.
So
I think that was the interesting thing about this run. We actually haven't played hardly any teams that we actually normally play against.
No.
So that's why it was an interesting challenge on that sort of front. Like going to Swansea, like today, saying, "Oh, there's only round 2." It's like, yeah, it's like they were one of the best in Wales at the time, and going over the bridge, which used to be fun when you started playing when you were a youngster, Greggy, when you were in the old Western League. They were great days going across the bridge and playing those guys. So I think that was the intriguing part for us, because we were a strong side. Having that challenge to go to, we haven't played at home yet, and playing all these guys away from home was actually a good start to a run, I think.
I think the also thing is that you don't. I mean, as a captain, it's. I mean, the cup run is the icing on the cake. I mean, my thoughts up until probably the regional final was on the league. I wanted to win the league. I didn't win the league the year before. We came second, of course, as I said before. But it was always to win that league. I didn't want to be a captain of Bath not winning a league. Because that's one of the things you put pressure on yourself. Because it happens quite a lot for Bath.
Did we win it in 2003?
2003. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Thanks for reminding.
So on to the regional final then. And I did a episode on this game alone with JB, but just to quickly touch on it, Bridgwater over the years, sort of the location sort of flip flopped a bit. So sometimes they've been in our region, and sometimes they haven't. We've played them a couple of times at the last 16 stage. Another big innings from Swins, and then obviously a great knock from JB. Statey batting at the sort of end of that innings. Do you remember anything about JB's knock?
Did I bat with him?
It's going really well. JB and Kegley, the two that I've done so far, and they have both known every single detail on every single.
Well, funny that. Those two.
How many did I get?
You got 10, but you and Brownie must have put on about 30 odd or so. At an important time. And
I remember this game. I can actually remember this one.
So can you remember what?
Maybe you should talk then, Greggy.
Step up, Greg.
The major thing was Swins' innings for me, because I think he got 50. I think we were on 55 as a team for about for a few wickets down. I think, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. So Swins goes at.
We were flying as well.
6. Yeah,
we were like 13 overs in. We were, what was it, 50 odd for 4 or something like that. And Swins is on 50.
Yeah. So you get to. Obviously, it's a really bad start. You sort of the top 5 goes for 29. Swins goes to 72. So 72 for 6 when JB takes over. And it seemed like over the years 175 in a big national game always seems to be about par, doesn't it? So from what you do remember, if anyone wants to chime in, will we be feeling confident at halfway to try and defend 164?
I think there's a real difference, and Greg might disagree, that I remember when I first started playing in the first team properly, like these years, maybe the year before and then this year, honestly, I thought if with our attack and with the consistency and the balance we had, if we got over 150, anything near 200, I always used to back us. I just thought 9 times out of 10, with half decent total on our bowling attack, we'd get ourselves out of that situation. Whereas I think much like 6 or 7 years later, as the league changed and cricket changed, that was much different. So I suspect that getting 170 or 180 at that point, we would have been thinking, we're with a really good shout. Which I think maybe years later, that's just not going to be enough. Whereas with that Bath side for a few years, I always backed us in those situations.
And it proved to be the case on this day, Bridgie.
One thing about Bridgwater, there was a couple of little things that, from being in the position we were to then bat virtually all our overs, with Brownie getting 60, Gwills hitting a straight 6 off Colsey, then reverse swing.
Wow.
And then him trying to reverse Colsey and taking it for 2 and doing those sort of things. We had a little bit of fun or a little bit of momentum at the end of it. Then when we went out to bowl, like Stady said, the great thing about our attack was that we had some good seam options. We had like good seam, variation with quick, seamers, and then our spinners were so varied. And obviously, at Bridgie, you always sort of know that second innings, it's sort of a funny place. And I actually think that was the best we probably bowled for a while, or definitely under Greg's captaincy. We were just on fire that day with the ball.
But also in the field, I remember. Yeah, I think we were. I thought our fielding display was brilliant that day. We got a lot of passion. We were up for it, and it was fantastic to be part of, and easy to captain.
And notably, this was the first game on this cup run when we saw Gwills come into the side. You spoke about his batting briefly, but 4 for 18, chopped out the heart of the Bridgie middle order. How valuable was he to you as a captain, Greg?
The biggest stat for me was that in my 2 years as captain, when he played, apart from the Lord's final, which we obviously will talk about later, we didn't lose a game. So that says quite a bit. I mean, it says quite a bit for what he can do on the field with his bowling. He could spin the ball massive. Like I said before, he wasn't as consistent as Swins maybe, but he could certainly more of a wicket taker than Swins. But it was what he did in the dressing room. It was having him in the dressing room was fantastic.
Genuine question: why was it that he got picked for that game? Did he come in for someone? Because then he didn't miss a game after that. So, Letty, did you just say that was his first game on that run?
Yeah. So he's. The side that day, Thorby's in there.
No, he played at Swansea.
Macca's not playing, so maybe that's where he's come in.
I think that coincides with the time when Macca wasn't in the Saturday team.
Right.
He wasn't in the lead team, and he was dropped. Not dropped, but he was playing the seconds. Just because we were picking teams at that stage on the pitches that we were playing on, so that we knew that was going to spin, and that was definitely a tactical decision. That changed a bit later on, but I also know that I remember the time when we on a Saturday we went over to play Keynsham. Macca's in the second team was dropped. We went over to play Keynsham. Our game was called off, so we went back and watched the seconds play. And he got 7 wickets, I think, and he turned around and had a bit of a dip at me. I think at one stage, could be a ball, something. a little bit rude coming from him, I thought. But
anyway. So, at what point then along this run, just so I know when to bring it up, Greg, there's the Mark Thorburn getting left out. When does that come in? Because
that comes in the semi-final.
Yeah.
All right. So if, we get past Bridgewater and we're on to the last 16, which again I think you're right. Once you get to that stage, there's always the crowd tends to get a bit bigger after tea, especially when you're playing down at North Parade on those big games. And I certainly remember this one, the base game. I remember watching this down at the club, and the scorecard suggests a pretty straightforward victory, but I guess when you look a little bit closer, probably needed a pretty significant contribution from Brownie. So obviously chasing 130 again. What do you remember about Basingstoke as a team?
I remember they took a fancy to Swins quite early with the bowling wise. I always remember that. But then obviously Barnsley got put wickets. But the one thing I really do remember about this game was the arrival of Nick Potter in our team. Because obviously we struggled a little bit at the start, with the top of the order. But Potsy at the end, when we were up against it, actually it was the first time, where I think he showed his value to us in the sense of scored a lot of runs in really random areas and ran really hard. That was the thing that I sort of remember about this game was Potsy standing up and delivering in this fixture. Obviously there's runs from the fully grown baby and James Brown, but I just remember Potsy standing up and delivering in this game.
And I guess it's all going to lead towards when we talk about how tough your selection was, Greg, for the final. But in so many of these games, you're getting important contributions down the order from the likes of JB and the likes of Potsy, and so valuable to have those players. I think often, playing games cricket for Bath we have more often than not probably got ourselves into a bit of trouble chasing. But I think the difference between us and so many other clubs in the years that I've played is there's always been that bloke at 7 or 8 or 9 that can come out and churn out 20 or 30, and it just shows game after game after game here. I mean, did it, Statey, to you, did this game feel comfortable? Were you sort of comfortable chasing a score like 130?
Yeah, from memory, I think at this stage of the tournament, I think this probably was quite comfortable, unusually so. I don't remember huge specifics of the game. When I look back on the scorecard, I think actually, yeah, we've gone to the wire far closer than that, let's say. And actually, that looked like one where, yeah, we probably, we got by quite comfortably at that stage.
Who took the wickets in that game?
Barnsley got Pfeiffer.
Okay, so this is the game. I from memory, I thought it was the one later, but this is the one where the day before. Or the week was it when he was dropped wasn't selected, I should say, on the Saturday.
Who's this?
Barnsley. So he'd gone somewhere exotic on an MCC tour, Belize, I think, as he did quite a bit during those days. So he went off on that. So we couldn't pick him. Unfortunately, I couldn't pick him on that Saturday, but I knew that. And on the Saturday, I think.
Yes, I remember that.
But on the Sunday, he obviously got the Pfeiffer, and I remember he took me for a coffee in the week before that game. He said, "Look, our friendship won't be harmed by this, but you're wrong." And I went, "Oh, okay, all right, thanks for that. Okay, this has probably been the hardest decision so far in my captaincy." He said, "I'll prove you wrong," and I said, "Look, I know you will, and that's kind of what we want, really." And he obviously did.
What can you remember? What happened to Shrubby this time?
No.
He wasn't in the Roger Twos or anything like that.
No, I think he'd stopped playing then. I think he'd stopped.
Yeah, I couldn't, because the other question I had about this cover run, because Griff played at Swansea but then didn't play any other games. Was he was at Derby at that time, or?
Yeah, because we had Tom. I mean, I think he wanted to play, but he couldn't because I think he had. I don't think he was at Derby, but he was certainly had his kids were young, weren't they? And I think, and he wasn't sort of spending enough time, with them. So I think that he said to me at the beginning of the year that he wants to play, but he doesn't know how much he can commit. So I said to him that, obviously I want you to play, but because he couldn't commit, Tom obviously was doing a great job behind the stumps. Obviously nowhere near in the same class as Steve as a keeper, but definitely, would score more runs. And I think that then enabled us to pick an extra bowler.
Because that was his first year, wasn't it, Hanko?
Yeah.
Hanko Potsy and those guys.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was. Tom was fantastic behind the stumps. I mean, he was a good, a real good keeper. Like I said, nowhere near as good as Steve was, but he would score lots of runs. So Steve's he just wasn't. He just couldn't commit every week, so therefore he wasn't playing.
Were there any other keepers around the club at the
time? Remind me, help me.
Well, I don't know, but the only reason I'm asking is that since 2003, I can't remember Hanko ever taking the gloves after that. I just wondered. I remember doing a good job.
Steve Pope came to us afterwards.
Yeah. But he didn't not for long, didn't he? He didn't play for long.
No, he only played for a year. But Hanko was great that year because the great part about the role that Hanko developed into bowling, Will Murray, Phil McComish sort of did those roles when, in this year, but Hanko was good behind the stumps. I think obviously had quite a few things to say.
But that year started off with Steve, with me wanting obviously Steve to play, but because he couldn't commit, we had to think a little bit on our feet. And I don't think like I said, I don't think we're overly blessed with the keepers in the club at that stage. So we had to sort of, make a role for Tom a little bit.
And also, one of the themes of that year was that competition for those JB, Macca, Potsy roles. So if having Hanko, who we knew could do a good job and was a natural selection as one of the best batters, then it gave you the luxury, didn't it, of picking someone else, somewhere to fit lower middle order and do a job with the ball that you wouldn't have otherwise had. So
yeah, definitely.
Because that's another thing, Greg. You didn't bowl Brownie that much that year.
JB hardly gets an over in 2003.
No.
But there's, I guess, and Will, Will's bowling a lot of those overs as well, isn't he?
Yeah, so Will was bowling a lot, so he was bowling very similar. But Macca, when he played, definitely filled that role. And when he played, he was fantastic, and he made it very easy because he just bowled one side of the wicket. You could just pat the offside, 2 on the leg side, straight the wicket and mid on, and that was it. We would just drive runs that way.
Just goes to show how good of a side you had. I mean, it's almost unthinkable now, knowing what we know about JB and Hanks and how good they are with the ball. The fact that neither of them have bowled an over in this cup run. I mean, it was, you almost can't believe it. But then I guess people that are listening to this now probably, if they are younger, they probably won't know who Phil McComish is. They probably won't know who Swins is. They won't know who Willie or Kim Watson are. But just brilliant cricketers. I mean, I remember, Kim just being the sort of most kind of calming influence on me, as a young lad, sort of when you picked me in your side the following year, having guys like that around. And I guess, again, for you, Greg, another tough decision when it came to the final. But, in the next game that we're going to talk about, he very much plays a big role. So Ealing at home, another home game. And obviously Ealing coming across at that point, we would have played them a couple of times already, Staunce.
Yeah. Do you know what? It's probably one of the clubs that in the whole competition that I don't think that between the two clubs have really got on. I think both clubs were quite ambitious in what they were trying to produce and everything like this. But yeah, Ealing was. Every time I think of Ealing, all I think is Neil Prescott and Sam Alley going, "Oh, what a feeling!" Singing that all the time. It just makes me giggle and smile every time. So
09, that one.
Say again.
Is that 09? When
09?
When Ellis had his day on the sauce.
I can't remember that, Matt. I was focusing on playing.
So in this game, Ealing are batting first, as most teams do when they win the toss at this stage of the competition. What do you remember, Statey, about the day in general? Were there a lot of people there? What was the weather like, that kind of stuff?
I think I remember, for me, because I guess I didn't have the history with Ealing at all by then. So that was probably the first time I'd have played against them. So I didn't have the same kind of historic kind of rivalry or anything. So that was probably the first time I come across them. I think I'm pretty sure that North Bay was pretty packed that day. Did I take a catch off Gwills in that game?
I don't know why you're asking me, mate. I wasn't there.
No,
and there's no point in asking Greg.
Is Greg gone to put 50p in the meter for his internet? What's going on there?
Hang on.
Mate, it says here you took a catch off him, but I don't
right,
remember
that honestly.
Why do you remember it?
I don't know. I just remember I was looking I was almost at backward point in front of the JR Pavilion, and I think Gwills bowled one, and they took like a bit of a drive outside off stump, and it went to my left, and I just remember feeling like it was a really like decent, just above waist high, and that was one of my few memories from that game is taking that catch in front of the JR Pavilion, and yeah, that's just stuck with me.
The JR Pavilion
has most of his wickets. Bradley, the internet okay?
My phone got too hot and it just turned off. Sorry about that. Right, where are we? What are we talking about?
Statey was just telling everyone about how amazing he is at catching.
Oh, he's fantastic at catching. He's brilliant at catching.
So Ealing get 177 on the board, and I would imagine probably there's a lot of nervous batters in the dressing room at half time, but not for long, judging by the response. Staunce batting 3, sitting on the balcony, as you probably were. What was your memory of Willie and Kim's opening partnership that day?
Oh, look, Will just plays his normal way. He's one guy you just love to watch bat and just see him hit it through point and things like that, dominate. And when Watto's in full flight, it's just such a good batsman. Just quite calm. They just dominated, and obviously we lost a couple of wickets. So then Hanko just comes in and plays as usual, probably quick style and just finishes the job. But when Will gets going in full flow, it becomes so much easier.
And I imagine those runs would have come pretty quickly as well.
Oh yeah, that's Will's style.
So
he'll take it.
123, opening up, chasing 180, and by the looks of it, never in doubt, and probably the most comfortable, of the chases on this cup run. Greg, from your point of view, at the end of the game, how are you sort of feeling about where your team can go from here? Because obviously, when you get down to the last four, I mean, you got to be thinking about winning at the stage, haven't you?
It's the time when you start getting a little bit more nervous. I think, bear in mind, it seemed a strange thing actually at the time. I mean, it kind of shows how big it was because we haven't been back there since. We haven't actually made a final since 2003. But there's Ben played in all three. I played in two. It seemed it was a weird feeling. It almost felt like it would always happen. I don't know whether I don't mean to be arrogant there, not at all. But it just felt that we were so confident in the fact that we would get to a final. Every couple of years, it just felt the norm. So even though you're nervous, you're also thinking that look, it'll happen.
Yeah, and I guess as a club, we've always, you say from a personal point of view, sort of being captain, and I was exactly the same. I don't know about Statey and Staunce, but I always wanted to get the league ticked off, so that was kind of out the way.
Yeah.
But if you ask me, as a captain, would I rather get to a club final or win the league? I mean, it's no contest for me in terms of those Sunday Cup games are just they're different to any other games you play, aren't they?
Well, it's the fact that we're talking about it now. 17, 18 years later, we're not really talking about the league. Which like you say, you go into a league or a campaign thinking that's what you want to do. You want to win the league, but as it develops the summer, that's the things, and that's what all the memories are about. Ups and the good memories and the bad memories. That's what they're all about. So it's fantastic. I mean, what other cup run can you have where you play against other teams in the country, where you can play at Lords, play with your mates Saturdays and Sundays? It's fantastic.
In all fairness, as a club, we never took it seriously until we actually got to the final in '98. I think that was when we actually thought, maybe we should look at the cup competition as well. Maybe that was just the caliber of players we had within our side. When the league, look, we know we're going to fight and be competitive in that area. Let's go for the cup as well if we can. And I think it's just a momentum thing. I think once you get a buzz, you get something going in the cup thing on a Sunday. You look at the majority of this team, we're quite a young 25 and under sort of side that, we don't have families, we didn't have partners, or some people might have had partners, whatever. We were able to compete on both days.
I think that was one partners at the time. I think I remember right.
No, Swins played well that year, didn't they?
The biggest thing for me was when in what was it, '98? You went to the team first of all. Did you? Was it Lords?
Yeah.
And I was at Lansdowne then, and I remember turning around to Barnes and I were there watching and in the crowd, and I turned around to Barnes and said, "Mate, we need a bit of this. I need a bit of this." The way that you guys went about that with it kind of changed, didn't it? The way you went about your training changed quite quickly. Yeah. The way that the club started to spend a bit more of their money wisely. That they were getting.
So, Brownie, in '98, sorry, were you at Lansdowne at the time?
I was at Lansdowne, yeah.
So you weren't a Bath player watching, thinking, "I want to be in the team." You were thinking, "I need to get to this club."
I want to come to this club. Yeah, I mean that was the main thing. We used to compete with, obviously, and beat Bath. I mean, the year before, Lansdowne beat Bath and won the league. But it was that following year, I turned around to Barnes and said, "Mate, I need a bit of this. This is fantastic." The way that you guys are. I mean, it was a time when you all had tracksuits and you had the minibus. You turn up and we would try not to be jealous of you all, but it was something that I wanted to be a bit part of, and not only the cricket but the coaching in the club was changing, and we were all developing as coaches, and I think that we wanted to be part of that.
So it was like it was a special time, like the whole period, that early period, where all three cup runs were so different, but personnel and the people who were involved in it. I think the core group who played in all the games were similar age, had a drive and a passion to try and succeed and do well. So I just think, I mean, the moments are different in different cup runs. I mean, the Swansea thing for me was special because I know whether it was just the group of players we had being away, obviously being captain for the first time, and just having that buzz as a group was superb. I'll always remember Swansea for some strange reason in this cup run.
So semi-final then, down at Teddington, and what I have always been told about this game is that it was the hottest day, of all time. Statey, how hot was it? First of all, and secondly, what colour was Staunce's face after the first?
Well, it was absolutely roasting. And Greg, am I right in saying that I didn't play on the Saturday because it was a stinking hot weekend?
Yeah.
So I think you didn't play me in the league on the Saturday, and so I think I'd watched the guys on the Saturday in the league, and so I was chomping at the bit. Didn't sleep much the night before. We travelled up to Teddington, and I was just itching to play because I wasn't knackered from playing on the Saturday. And I opened the bowling at Teddington, and it was just the most exposed kind of area of land in the middle of like a public park.
The national park, isn't it?
Yeah, with one tree like down at fine leg, and I think I bowled one over, and I went back to fine leg, and I was like, oh my gosh, like my mouth was dry as a bone, like sandpaper. I bowled one over, and I just remember thinking, it's unbelievably hot. And it was quite flat as well and fast. The outfield was just lightning because it was just being so hot.
It's just dry.
Yeah, that was my memory.
So this is when we started to sort of pick from a squad, I think, because we had two massive game on the Saturday. So we played Cheltenham at Bath in a hot day, and I remember saying to you, look, we're going to play Thorpes today. You won't play today, but you will definitely play tomorrow. I want to keep you fresh. You're a young man, and I wanted to make sure that you were fresh for that. So I definitely remember that. Staunce that day got 100 against Cheltenham. Is that right, Ben?
Yeah, man.
And for us to win that game was great. And then we travelled up, good spirits up on the in the minibus up to Teddington that Saturday night. And I remember the place had a swimming pool, didn't it?
Yes.
The hotel was fantastic. We were
next morning.
It was brilliant. So we made sure that we were having a good swim in the next morning. It was great. It was warm. But I didn't, the day before I felt was hotter because we were in middle of Bath. I felt that because we're in that little bowl at North Parade, it felt hotter. But it definitely was warm. Even the pictures, you see the pictures from that day, it even looked hot. There was a different colour to everything. But yeah, so turning up there was quite interesting. And I remember their captain was the ECB chief now, isn't it? Tom Harrison.
Yeah, I remember you and I speaking when we had a look at the deck, and it was hard, but it had a tinge of green on it, and going, right, what are we going to do? Are we going to pick Thorpes or are we going to pick Macca?
So that was the decision. This was where it got tough because Statey was always going to play, Barnsley was always going to play as our two seamers, but it was that third seamer. Obviously, we had the spinners in Goyles. And Swins. It was that third seamer that we needed to pick from, and it was between Thorpes and Macca. And because it had a hint of green on it, we went with Phil.
And just
good decision.
What obviously Thorby, we all know is a great competitor, a fiery character on the field. Probably mellowed. Now, I'd have thought, but is it fair to say that he didn't take it very well, Greg?
He didn't take it too well, bless him. One of my biggest struggle as a captain was doing this, was letting people down. I would have sleepless nights over it, and I certainly had a sleepless night that night over that decision, not necessarily over the semi-final, but over the fact that who I was going to pick, and I knew, somewhere along the line, I would have to pick the two that would take it the worst, and already Macca had called me a bald something or other, in the previous few weeks before that. But Thorby didn't. He didn't take it very well. Yeah, and we can talk about a training session a couple of weeks later, but that's another story.
Yeah, but all of our listeners don't, Greg. So we'll come back to that. So Teddington, bat first. You said you're a really quick outfield, and the wicket looked firm. So we must have bowled pretty well to restrict them to 159.
So sorry, Rob.
No, go on, mate. You go. Yeah.
The biggest turning point for this was actually quite amazing, really. So Tom Harrison was their player. So Tom Harrison is now the ECB chief, their player, their captain. He had a little bit of swagger about him. He was quite confident that they were going to win at home, etc. But bear in mind, we had a big crowd that day. We took a lot of coaches up, went to the crowd, so it felt like we were almost playing at home, and we were obviously confident. But I remember him looking quite good with the bat. I'm thinking, how are we going to get this guy out? Barnsley bowling quite nicely, Stacey bowling well early on. And I remember thinking, right, I've got to take Barnsley off here. They were no wickets down. I've got to take Barnsley off. And I said to Barnsley, right, I'm going to take you off. He said, no. He said, if Tom Harrison's facing the next over, so if he's still facing my, the first ball, what would be make sure that I bowl again? I said, mate, come on, I got to get you off because, we got to get someone else on and we got to bring you back later. He said, no, I'm telling you. Make sure that I bowl if he's facing it from my end, and he was. Statey bowled, and he was obviously bowling. He was facing it at their end, so I had to bowl Barnes again. First ball of that over, he bowled a short one at him. He gloved it straight to me at gully, which was absolutely amazing. Because you think how the confidence of Barnsley to pull something off. I could just turn to him all the time and say, mate, do this, and he would do it. It was brilliant, and to get him out at that stage was obviously a massive blow for them, but also a big blow for us.
Yeah, so when he goes, it's 80 for 4, and he's got 48 of them. So from then on, was it just a case of kind of putting the squeeze on?
Yeah, it was, and then we put Macca on, and he takes 4 for nothing.
Yeah.
On a wicket that was moving all over the place. To be fair, it was green. It was certainly seaming, and he bowled beautifully. And again, like I said earlier, what was so good, you could just stack one side and create pressure. So stack the offside, 2 or 3 on the leg side, and he would just bowl just outside off stump and just hit the top of off. It was brilliant.
And obviously you said it was tough, competition wise and selection, but obviously you must have felt quite vindicated, with your decision in the end to pick him over.
You're right, but and that was my sort of response to Thorbs was like, come on, we're obviously in a squad here. We've got to make sure we're all in it together. Macca got 4 for, and he said, yeah, but I would have taken 6 for. So this was, it was always going to be a tricky thing. And no matter how well he did, it was still hard to pick the right players or feel that you're picking the right players. So
we sort of get to the halfway point, and I guess, it doesn't matter whether you're chasing 59 or 359, in a cup semi-final, national semi-final, nothing's set in stone, and you lose Kim very early. I take it, Tom Harrison was he's a very statey type captain by the looks of things, because he's opened the batting and the bowling.
Very good.
But he gets rid of Kim quite early, and I guess whenever you're chasing a tense game, it's all about the start, isn't it? So Staunton's coming out, 1 down for not many. What sort of things are you saying to Willie? What's your game plan? What's your next move?
With Will, it's the game plan with Will is just making sure he keeps in check and just keeps playing the way he does. I love batting with Will because we didn't have to bat with any pressure. We knew that if we just kept with him and stayed around with him, he'll dominate and lead the way. One thing I do remember about that innings, even though it was hot, it was actually Hanko's little mini sort of like little burst of 20 odd, and I remember him. He hit a sweep slog for 6, and then bounced off the table and hit a lady in the face, and just those sort of little things about telling to but they were really in your face. But again, we just didn't feel like we were really under any pressure. I mean, we lost 3 or 4 wickets close to the end total, but I always remember Barnsley hitting his first ball, for 4 and just celebrating, running off with his arms in the air and everything like that. But I just remember how hot it was, the whole weekend, and just how well Macca bowled, and that's the thing I remember about that day. I don't really remember.
I thought it was really tense. Probably because I was one of the next guys to come in. But like when we started to lose a couple towards the end, and I remember our changing room. It's bizarre the stuff I do remember. The changing room was kind of set back in the pavilion. There was a little corridor that then led out onto the field. And I just remember kind of not really being able to watch. So I was just like peeking out in the corridor to see what's going on, and we'd lose a wicket. And it was just this real nervous tension in the dressing room because the dressing room just didn't look out on the ground at all. But yeah, again, when Barnes just went in and slapped it, it felt like that he'd hit 20 runs when we probably needed a couple to win it. But it felt for me really, really tight at the end of that match. Just knowing, I guess, what was on the cards is you're a shot away from Lords. I guess that was when it became really real, and it felt really, really tight.
There's a really nice picture somewhere. I'm not sure where it is. Hopefully, one of you guys has it of you, Greg. I guess just after the winning runs have been hit. As captain, just tell us what it's like to kind of win a semi-final, and then what it's the build up to a final is like, from a captaincy point of view.
Yeah, so luckily I was out batting with Barnes at the time when he hit that, and it was getting quite tense at the middle, but I'd much rather been out in the middle than probably in the dressing room at the time. So it was, I remember Barnes coming out and saying, "Watch this," or something along those lines. Like, no messing here. Typical Barnes style. I'm not going to mess around. This, and he did. He just smashed it for extra cover.
Did we have time, Greg, or not? How much time did we have when Greg went in?
Barnes went in about 5 overs.
Yeah, he wasn't going to mess around. He wasn't going to mess around. And there was me nurdling it around, backward a point, nervously, and he just comes in and smashed it for extra cover. But but to be out there with you, one of your best mates was brilliant to win that, and he just turned around and gave me a big hug. We walked off, and it was kind of a weird feeling because, again, it doesn't really sink in. It was a lovely feeling. I remember getting in the dressing room, and it was a little bit like, because it was so hot, it was a little bit just, get a shower, have a beer. But it wasn't really until we got on the minibus on the way home that it really sunk in.
Who got on the minibus first?
What was that?
He was on the minibus?
I can't remember. Go on.
You don't remember that? That was so funny. Do you not remember Will Murray being on top of the minibus and putting a dent in the roof?
Yes, he climbed on top of the minibus. Was it Hanks or Swins? He then drove in big circles. I swear they were.
Muttley. That was Muttley who drove.
Did a couple of laps of the Teddington car park.
I do remember that.
With him on the roof.
I do remember that. But it was weird because at that stage, even though it was sunk in that we've just done something pretty good and got to a final at Lords, I was already thinking. I remember already thinking before probably the second shandy hit me that I was then going to be picking a team for Lords, which was again, and I've just had that traumatic experience, having to pick between Macca and Thorby, and I knew that another one was going to come. So I was already stressing about, the final and making sure that we won that. But also, I was also thinking, about the league because that was becoming quite tense as well. That was going down.
That's why it was such a big weekend. Is playing Cheltenham on the Saturday and winning that game, and then going and winning the semi-final. That basically set up our season in the sense that we were able to divide ourselves from Cheltenham.
Yeah.
But that whole day, that whole bus trip home, was one of the funniest things ever. Apart from Thorby, sat in the corner, but Will, Murray and Muttley just going at each other. Will needed a wee for God knows how long. I thought Will was going to throttle him at one stage, and then we stopped off at some pub so he could have that, and then we emptied the pub out with all his alcohol, and then got back on the bus. And it was one of the funniest trips that we've had for a while. But Will.
And so you get home safe and sound, and then. So you're obviously the league is coming to a conclusion, which I guess we'll touch on as part of the next little bit of the story. But Staunce, somewhere in and around the following week, you get yourself injured, don't you? What happened there?
Oh, actually, after
is it This matters slightly for Greg going forward, but go on.
The night after celebrating the Teddington victory, I woke up in the bath, and I don't know why. I woke up in the bath, and then I remember getting a lift and going to the club to get my car, and JC's mum and I think his grandma were there, and I was sort of bent over and just like, you need to go to hospital, I think. And I had my appendix out that night, so I was out of action for a couple of weeks.
And so what ends up happening is, for the last league game, Andy Owen comes into the side, and it's still debating whether or not he made a century.
That's very good.
So this was my debut for the club as well, and I remember going out there with Will. That was my first game, and it was the league decider. So there must have been another batter out injured for me and Andy Owen both to come into the side, but
that was
James.
So that was when I said to Kim, because Kim unfortunately hadn't scored a run for a little while, and I had said to Kim, mate, I need you to get some runs. I need to get some runs, get away from the pressure of having to play this game against Weston-super-Mare to win the league. We had to win that game, so it's got quite tough. It got to another final really, where we had to play.
James Brown was away as well, wasn't he, on holiday?
So James. So this is when it all started to unravel a little bit. So I said to Kim, mate, you need to get yourself in the seconds and score some runs. That was the plan, which he took really well, and to his credit. And James Brown got married, and then so therefore wasn't playing on Saturdays because he got married, I think maybe the week before, and then went on to his honeymoon in Italy. So it started to unravel a little bit, and it started to think, look, we're losing a little bit of our team, a bit of momentum. So some of the momentum that we had from the semi-final was changing.
Yeah.
So we had some new players. Who Andy Owen come in, who was to open the batting. To bat 3, I think. Was that right?
Yeah,
well, effectively, mate, because your decision to bring in a 16-year-old on debut rather than Kim Watson paid off, because I got out in the first over.
Did you? But that was the other thing. You were doing really well. You were doing really well. So I was trying to bring on some of our youth as well, and try to, like you say, to allow Kim to have some runs in the twos.
And so Andy Owen comes into the side, and the game's, as you said, it's against Western, and it's a must-win game to win the league. He gets somewhere between 97 and 100. That's the whole 55. I mean, I remember I was on the balcony. I was very much in that kind of just don't talk to anyone unless you're spoken to sort of thing. Just got haven't been part of the whole league season, but I do remember.
You definitely didn't do that, Lenny.
Sort of watching in disbelief as Andy ran across the ground, with his lights still on, to go and sort of, I don't know how that conversation would have went with Ken in the score box, but it changed. It changed from 97 to 100, and so he comes back across. We win the game, but of course, now you're faced with real selection issues. What happened with Thorby at training that week, Greg?
Oh, Robin. So yes, so I remember we turned up on a Thursday for centre wicket practice. Thorby hadn't spoken to me since the semi-final, which was which was bad. Was hard for me because Thorby was a friend, and I wanted that was tough, and I took it quite personally, I think. But he that day he rocked up and obviously not happy, and I remember because Barnsley was our coach. I said to Barnsley, mate, can you just get me in there. Let me bat first. I want to see what happens. So Thorpe's pushing off from the white wall, storming in, steaming in, not happy. He runs through the crease and bowls flat at me. So the ball doesn't bounce and it hits me straight on the glove. And I thought, okay, fair enough. But that was the first time, and I think it's happened about 4 or 5 or 6 times. He just run through the crease, bouncer, flat one, bouncer, flat one.
He always struggled with the crease line, though.
Say again?
He always struggled with the crease line.
Yeah.
but this was probably about 8 feet. You know, and so I finally lost it and threw down the gloves and had a bit of a dip at him. In which, a little bit like that. In which case, and then he left.
Who won?
He definitely won. But it was, that was a sad part for me because, as I said, Forbes was a good friend. He, and that was really tough to take as a captain because you never want that to happen. And for him to leave, and he didn't play for the club for that rest of that season, was tough, I regret obviously, having to make the decisions, but I'm sure if you spoke to Forbes now, he would regret how he handled that situation as well.
I don't think I ever had to be in a situation, like that. I'm sure Statey and Staunce, I don't know whether you guys have. I mean, I suppose the closest thing for me was having to ask you, Staunce, to step down to the twos for a couple of weeks in your last season, right before you went off. But,
that's why I left, Matt.
Hey, I gave you a goal in the last game at Froster.
Thanks, Matt.
Anna got all the lads to sign that picture of you getting 60 at Lords, so
Thanks, Matt.
But Greg, for you had so many of these decisions to make, and you mentioned earlier about how it had an effect on your love of the game. Just how much of a strain was it for you in the days leading up to the final? Just trying to decide who you were going to pick, who you were going to play.
As I said, this was probably my weakest side of my captaincy ability, was the fact that I took it too personally, and I found it tough, letting people down. I would have loved it if I didn't have to make any decisions, but because of the way that as I said before, that it lost a little momentum in selection because Brandy got married, went away. Kim hadn't been scoring some runs recently, and I remember getting lots of pressure from Barnesy to make sure, as because he was obviously the coach at the time, to make sure that we picked a team that was on form. And
we met across Keys and Coon down, Barnesy, yourself, and I reckon we sat there and we went round a number of different teams and we just basically went on gut instinct of who was in form, what was the latest performances, and tried to pick what we thought would be the winning side that we required to get us across the line. And I know it really affected Greggy in the sense of, I know he hated letting people down or that aspect. The semi-final thing. I remember the decision clear as day when we spoke about it and we went, yeah, let's go with this. I think just because of the way Forbes took it, it became quite hard in that sort of sense. And I think if Forbes had taken it and banked back, and I reckon he would then probably had a shot actually playing in the final because the type of bowler he was. But the whole batting one, I know I probably threw a curveball in. JB going away because I think JB came back 3 days before the final.
Well, no, this was the problem, but this was the issue. So the day before that we left to go to Lords, which was probably the day before the final, or maybe 2 days before the final.
Yeah.
Anyway, we had a training session. Someone came up with an idea. I don't know whether it was me. Came up with an idea that we'd train at the Suitors Club because it had a similar slope as Lords. Anyway, so we were up.
It was such a bad idea.
I think it was.
Looking back at it.
I think it was.
You sure it wasn't Rowies?
Oh, it might.
Yeah. What was that? What was that about? It was a terrible wicket. Willie kept hitting the ball miles.
It was a strange old thing. But we started, which was probably one of my regrets. We stopped doing the things that we'd done before, so we started training somewhere else, which was a bit silly, really, because it made no sense. I guess the thought process was try to get used to the slope of Lords, and it had the similar side for slope, but it was a decision that probably I regretted. Anyway. I remember, so Brownie had not come back, and he was late on his plane, or his plane was late or something, but he hadn't come back until the day that we left to go to Lords, and he hadn't trained that night. And I said to Barnesy and to Ben, look, we need him to train. Geez, he hasn't played cricket for 3 weeks. This is ridiculous. We've got one of our best players that have done so well in the previous rounds, hasn't played any cricket, hasn't trained, and I needed him to train, but he couldn't get to this training session in time. So that was the decision why James Brown didn't play, unfortunately, in the final.
How did he take it?
Oh, look, he was brilliant. He took it fantastically well. I mean, obviously he was, a bit grumps, but he took it brilliantly. I mean, and the fact that, he was fully supportive of what we were trying to do.
And the other one was Kim Watson. I guess with Andy having got the runs he did, in the last league game, I suppose, was that a slightly easier conversation with Kim?
Yeah, it's a little bit easier. I think that our philosophy was always to pick the teams that we felt would win a game. Not necessarily about what people had done in the past. So it was always about what was going to win the game. So with the Kim issue was that I put him in the seconds, try to get some runs in the twos, try to get him some form. He didn't score any runs, unfortunately, in that game. Andy coming in and scoring his dubious 100. Actually played him into the final. The bloke had just scored 100 off a Western League 100 when it was quite a tough game. So he, in a way that we felt he had to open the betting.
So you get to Lords. Statey, you mentioned for the semi-final, you didn't sleep much. You've played at Lords since, but obviously for a 17-year-old, I guess, it must have been a mixture of nerves and excitement.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's quite a big gap, I think, between the semi and the final.
3 weeks, I think.
Yeah, and it felt like a very long time. I remember traveling the day before, and I think we then had a dinner, didn't we? We had to go to the dinner the night before the game with the sponsors, and just no one was really interested. We just need to kind of do the bare minimum and get it done. And I remember walking down. Greg, there's that picture, isn't there? We were all walking down the day before the game. Was it the morning of the game? Did we walk together? We walked from the hotel down to the ground all together. And there's a picture that I've got framed, which I quite often look at of us all like as a team, kind of walking down the road. And this, brings back loads and loads of memories. It was amazing. And I think because of my because of the age I was at, I wasn't really close to any of the stuff that Greg's just talked about. Because when you're 17 and you're kind of yoked to the side, you're not that close to the politics, or you can stay away from it. So I probably knew who was getting picked and who wasn't, but I wasn't party to all those tough conversations or felt particularly involved. So for me, it was just the excitement of what was coming, probably thinking I was going to get picked, I imagine, and without having to be worried about all the rest of it.
And Greg, I know the picture you're talking about, Statey, because it was part of that collection of pictures they had in the clubhouse for a while, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Because Greg was still clinging onto a hairline in those days, wasn't he?
I looked almost 50 then, actually, but now I look a bit younger now.
So, Greg, kind of going out in your blazer to do the toss, what was that like?
As a whole day, it was a bit of a blur, but I remember that massively. It was a real it was quite emotional. I remember walking down the steps, bear in mind, we've only been there a couple of years before, so we were kind of used to that situation. But walking down to do it as a captain was something that I never thought I'd ever do. Geez, you never think you're going to captain a team, your mates at Lords in a national final, and that was pretty special. I remember asking the groundsman what we should do if we win the toss, and he said, "Well, you got to bowl. You must bowl," and that's what happened.
So, that was based on purely what the ground said rather than your own interpretation of the pitch and the conditions and the fact that it's
I think we were always going to bowl, but he just sort of added on. It was the fact that it was an early start. So it was September. It was an early start. I think it was like a 10:30 kickoff, and it was a little bit. He said, if you're going to get anything out the wicket, now's the time. So in the morning, the due was to get anything out of it, and it kind of backed it up really, because we bowled and fielded pretty well.
And you never kind of put any credence to the sort of runs on the boards in a final kind of theory. Back yourself.
I mean, and that was weird because as a coach I was at the time, I would always say to the teams I was coaching, making sure on a big game you bat first, get runs on board. So it was a little bit against what But if you look at the way that we played the semi-final, again chasing, we felt that we were a good chasing team.
So.
Just backing that up, if you look at the whole cup run, we chased virtually most games. that was the weird part about this cup run. I think it was only Bridgewater that we actually batted, or we were batted first. Virtually every other game we actually chased, which was completely different to our league. Sometimes our league idea was like, let's put runs on the board and do it this way. But the cup run, I don't know why, it just seemed to happen this way.
So their captain, who you across with, Greg, he's, I remember watching this game with Stu Kingwell from the stand there with all the other Bath supporters. And, the guy opening the batting, John Truman, he seemed like a really organised, good player. Tell me about his knock, Staunce.
First of all, he was plumb duff to Barnsley. I just remember it Tuesday. Yeah, I'd love to. I know there was a video of the day. He was plumb. I was still at first, so it was so plumb. But yeah.
So is there a video of the day?
I believe so. Yeah.
Can we make sure that gets destroyed as part of some sort of?
You'll be the star of the show a little bit later, mate. Don't you worry.
Yeah, that's what I like. I remember that really vivid. Obviously, really different in the sense of my build-up was obviously I hadn't played for 24 days since I had my appendix out. Obviously, going through, talking to Brownie about what we're going to do with teams and everything like that, and just getting clearance 2 days beforehand to be able to play and train and do that sort of thing. But the whole day, look, it's special. Playing Lords is amazing. But just remember in the field, we were on top and we were going really well. Like Barnsley, I think Barnsley bowled saw like 7 overs for about 19. But I reckon the last 4 overs, we just lost a little bit, where we just lost a little bit of control and went around the park a little bit. In the last 4 or 5 overs, I think Barnsley went for about 23 in his last 2. I was just saying that, I remember vividly and things like that. Then batting wise, even like you look at the scorecard, everybody got in and got out. That's the annoying part, So,
my own take on it was that the things that we as a team, because it was a Lord's final, we didn't do so well. So the disciplines that we did really good. So i.e. extras and making sure we cut down extras were we didn't do so well in the final. I mean, I think we had some like 30 or 35 extras to their maybe 20. I remember that being quite a big effect. When it comes down
we fumbled quite a bit in the field as well. I remember just little percentages that we were just slightly off the mark, whether we wanted it too much or what. It's a chestnut and all that sort of thing, but. Being a third final, not won it before and everything like that, we wanted, obviously, everybody wanted to put their own name on stamp on, winning a comp, but just such small little details that we sort of got wrong on, or in the moments. I think that's the biggest thing.
So in the chase, obviously, as you said, Staunce, a lot of people got in and got going. It sort of felt like when you and Will were together, just building a partnership, that we were kind of, we were just starting to sort of get on top. But it felt from the stands watching Willie that, he just strayed a little bit from his natural game that day.
Yeah.
He played with himself a little bit more.
Yeah. I mean, I remember the shot he got out to. Like, I think he just got slightly bogged down and just like tried to take one over mid wicket and getting RBW. And you're right. Will, his whole ambition was to be able to play at Lords. That was the major thing for Will. That's what he wanted to do. The whole time he was at the club wanted to play as well as he could, but he was really envious of all his players being able to play in the National Cup, play at Lords. I think probably maybe if you talk to Will, it would be one thing that he probably looks back and goes, do you know what? Yeah, it got to me as an occasion. If Will was facing 61 balls and he was on 38, you go, well, someone's contained him quite well there. That's not the Will Murray that we all know and as well as we do. But looking back at that, it's really weird. Like I've been talking to Will quite a bit lately, and he talks about it the whole day and just like, how special it was for him as a Kiwi to be able to play at Lords and do that. And I think he sort of admits that, the occasion was probably a bit big and and things like that, and his personal life and everything like that. The occasion was a special, big occasion for him.
Yeah, I think I guess if for the likes of yourself and maybe Swins, Greg, Barnesy, those guys that have had played there before, I guess maybe the occasion obviously is still massive, but you've got a bit of experience to draw from. Which is why I was a little surprised with what you said, Greg, about your decision to bowl first, because it always feels like the pressure's on the batting team. No matter what sort of situation you get into. But looking at this chase, I mean, I remember Swins and Hanks both batting beautifully for the time they were in. But again, and then Greg, I guess you come out sort of around about the halfway stage. What's your, when you come out to bat at 128 for 4, what's your game plan? What's your thinking, as captain?
Yeah, I think, to go back what you just said then about bowling first, I think you're right. I think, all these decisions have loads of, it can go either way, can't it? The fact that I think giving, in hindsight, I wish I did bat first, but I knew that, like I said, the rest of the previous competition, every single game, we'd making sure that we were bowling first and we create pressure that way. And the way it actually sets up, they only got, what do they get, 214, something like that?
Yeah.
That's not massive, is it? So even then, with our batting lineup, we should have chased that down. So even that, it was almost justified. And I think a few decisions, like Ben said, didn't go quite our way that day. But then to come in as I said, a few people getting starts, to come in as a captain in the middle order was set up really for me. I mean, I wish, again, I wish I was, I don't know, I guess trying to nerdle it around a bit more. I was trying, again, you do things differently, I guess. My whole game was to make sure that I could hit bad balls, but certainly hit, good balls, rotate the strike. And I wish I'd stuck to that game plan a little bit more. And that's the way it sort of started off. And then, I hit a drive that, only was, I don't know, a few inches off the floor that their guy caught it cover, which was a super catch. And that obviously was a bit of a change. But again, I kind of wish that I was a little bit more disciplined, that I didn't go for that. And I, saw the team through.
So before that ball, we need 41 with 6 wickets in hand.
Yeah.
I guess it didn't. Watching in the crowd, it didn't feel like that. It didn't feel like we were that far ahead of the game. If that makes sense. I think we needed about 5 and over or something for that last 41. But when you put it into context like that, 41 off, with 6 wickets in hand, it does feel like, the pressure might have got the better of us towards the end.
I think you're right. I think the biggest problem, and Ben you touched on it earlier, was that people had starts, but they didn't go on. So therefore, there was always new batters at the crease, and I felt that, there was, because of that, there was always a bit of pressure, and it look, without a shadow of a doubt, pressure got to us in the end. That we didn't play as well as we could have or should have. And that was definitely the worst we've played all year, I think.
So I guess unfortunately, Statey, what all this is leading up to is the conclusion of this cup run. So in 98, it was the last over. 2001, it was the last ball. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously this, I guess this is the, it's kind of difficult to get closer than, without actually getting there. But I guess, what's happening. So
I love these memories, Letty.
So we could just end it there, couldn't we? And then,
it's taken me 18 years to get over this.
So, Statey, obviously up to this point, you've had a pretty good day. As you said, kind of 17. You've taken a couple of wickets. You've been sort of part of a good performance in the field. Watching on the balcony. I mean, you were you nervous? A nervous waiter to bat? Generally.
Yeah. I was definitely a nervous waiter, and to be honest, I can't remember. I can't remember a lot about our innings. Not surprisingly, but I was a pretty nervous waiter. So I can't even remember from whoever lost their wicket before I went out to bat. I don't know who it was. Potsy. Yeah, I don't remember walking out there. I haven't got loads of memories other than kind of what I remember more than anything else is the conversations I had in the kind of lead up to the last event. But yeah, the chase itself and my feelings beforehand, a bit of a blur actually. So
talk us through that last over then, if you don't mind, if it's not too painful, because Gwills comes out, and with an over to go, we need 2. Is that right? 9 down.
I don't know.
Well, is that going to be your answer to every question?
No. When you get to there'll be one bit where I think I know what happened from then on. But genuinely, if you give me the sums that 6 balls out, I'm not 100% sure.
All right, so we'll go straight. We'll go for it then, mate. Shall we? So there's 4 balls to go. We need 2 to win, 1 to tie. Did you know what the scenario was if it had been a tie?
I don't know if I did. I don't know if I did at the time. I definitely don't now.
Right? Thoughts? Any ideas? Right.
It wasn't like the World Cup one, was it? It wasn't on boundaries. It was on wickets, wasn't it? We would have lost.
So we needed 2 regardless.
Yes.
Okay, so there's 4 balls to go. We need 2 to win. Statey, talk us through what happened next.
So, from my memory of it, and I would absolutely stand to be corrected, and Gwills might think that the conversation was slightly different, which is fine, and we've spoken about it many a time over a beer. But I think we met in the middle, and we said that if I got anything on it, we could run, because Gwills would be backing up for his life, and I backed myself to get to the other end 9 times out of 10 because I was pretty quick. So I kind of backed myself to get to the other end. So I thought, if it goes somewhere, we're off, and Gwills will get in, and I'll bloody get in the other end. So that was what was going through my head. And then my memory of it was they had a seamer. Don't know if it was one of their opening bowlers. Bowled, kind of went down. He pushed it past down the leg side, hit me halfway up knee roll. Wasn't an LBW. Whether they appealed or not, I genuinely can't remember, but they might have done because it was kind of tense at the time. Then it kind of hit my pad, but it was going down leg side, and then dropped out onto the offside towards gully or just backward a point. This is, and so that for me, that was my trigger enough to know, right, we're off here. That's like, it's dropped kind of in front of just behind the wicket. Go. Think we weren't quite aligned on that.
Never used the word go, Stacey.
No, I don't think that's why I shouted. We probably didn't shout anything because I thought we were both just going to be off anyway.
So Gwills doesn't run,
but that's not what I thought we'd agreed. So I mean, I genuinely, I don't know what to say. That was about it for me. Then
I thought Gwills did run.
I seem to remember you two kind of both stopping, and then Gwills ends up going, but it's too late.
Yeah. I mean, we probably both started to do something, and whether one of us, twitched a little bit, and then we both, honestly,
because you ran in from point, didn't you?
Yeah. I went just behind square. I don't know exactly where the fielder came from, but all went horribly wrong.
So obviously there's that picture of you on your hands and knees in the middle of the wicket. I can only imagine, mate, what that must have been like for you. And I guess watching from the balcony, Staunce and Greg. I mean, what were the last sort of moments like? You know, people hiding behind, windows, people crouching down, people hanging off the balcony. I mean, what was going on?
Do you know, the only thing I remember is Barnsley shouting at Wills, going, "Get Statey! Get Statey!" Because Statey was obviously in a pile. That's the only thing, you know. Obviously, everything's hit the fan. But all I remember is vividly is Barnsley. Just in that moment, looking out for a youngster within our team. You know, it didn't matter about the result or anything like that. That was the thing that stood out for me. At that time, you know, obviously, you know, looking back at it and go, yeah, we lost the game. But I remember that really vividly.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's probably part of what has made Barnsley as successful as he's become, I guess, you know, to push all that aside and actually think about the poor bloke who's out there in the middle. You know, I guess probably, you know, obviously the celebrations going on around. I mean, at that point, Greg, you just in a bit of shock? Are you know, speechless? Is it a case of, right, lads, let's get down there and shake hands? I mean, what's going through your head?
I think a bit of all that. I think it's definitely shock. You're definitely in a daze. I think you try and do the right things, you know. So you're trying to be good sportsmen. So you're trying to go down, making sure you shake hands. But you know that you don't have that feeling that you could have had, you know, of elation. But it's a feeling that only really hits you, you know, much later.
Yeah.
You know, but for me, it was, like I said, it was a time of just wrapping up the proceedings, making sure my team was okay. Like you say, you know, making sure that Stacey's okay. You know, making sure that you did the right things, shake the captain by the hand, the umpires by the hand, make sure you know, acknowledge the scorers. You know, you've got to do all those things as captain, and you know, but equally, you're struggling inside.
How many days and nights, Statey, was it before you kind of were able to sort of put that to bed or put that to rest?
Well, it's a funny one because it kind of fits and starts. To be honest, I would think about it a lot, but at random times, and it was weirdly, it was a massive motivator for me for a long time afterwards. So I actually framed that picture of me in the middle with the umpire walking past me. Kind of, I think he was just like leaning over to like make sure I was all right. I got that framed and put that on my desk at home for the next 2 or 3 years. So whenever I was oohing and ahhing about, and it wasn't just cricket. Obviously, that was a big motivator to me to kind of, yeah, if I need to do a bit of training or go that extra mile, I would look at that, and if I thought about it within a seconds or a minute, I'd be like, right, well, I'm doing it. And really weird and sad, I guess, is that for my schoolwork as well, I used to be there, and if I was going through exams like A levels, which I think was the year after, I could just look at that picture on my desk, and it used to light this fire inside me, and I would then go the extra mile on whatever it was I was thinking about, and it would still do it to me now, mate. I would, if I thought about it enough, and well, this has, then if there was something that I was like, yeah, it brings up enough emotion in me to go and do whatever it takes, because it's never quite going to go away. And it's thinking about what it could have been like if it had a squirt to gully and we'd have ran, we still needed one to win. Whereas, I don't know, if it squirted to gully and we said no, and the next ball I'd fluffed it through gully and we'd ran 2, and that would be the one ball and I'd hit the winning runs. Like, the thinking about what that would have been like, me and Gwils in the middle on that short boundary with all our supporters up there, it's enough to make me absolutely, it tears me up, and I used it for a long time afterwards as a motivator.
Yeah, I mean, you was from that stand that you talk about. It was the strangest thing. Like, it just went from everyone was standing, and sort of you were grabbing the shirt of someone near you. So I was next to Stu, Kingwell, and I was just sort of grabbing his shirt, and everyone was like sort of like bouncing up and down as the bowler's coming in, and then just obviously to go from that to sort of flat. But what I remember was after the game, everyone came out onto the outfield, and I just remember like all the players coming down and all family and friends were there, just kind of not quite knowing what to say to anybody in that situation. But I suppose, like you said, Greg, earlier, you feel like, certainly as a 16-year-old in the crowd, I felt like, right, well, next year, we'll get them next year, and it has been 18, 17 years, and we haven't got that.
But I think that shows. I mean, and you have to think about all the teams that have gone since that and how good they've been, and they still haven't achieved that. That thing, which is quite special. It shows quite. And I knew deep down. I mean, even though how hard it was to not win that game, I was so proud of the guys and that year and what we achieved, that I knew it was still something quite special. To get to Lords and to play at Lords, to captain at Lords, to play with all your mates at Lords. And as I said, as a club, to do that three times in, was it 5 or 6 years, is unbelievable, isn't it? If you think about it.
Absolutely.
The fact
sorry, because I kind of said, I mentioned it at the start, but whether we'd have won or lost, whether it made a difference or not, whether I'd feel slightly differently if we'd have won it at the end. But at the age I was at, and then having gone through that and the emotions and the ups and then the ultimate down at the end, all those blokes that I went through it with, especially in the final, and the handful that went through every single round. So your Gregs and your Bens, and there's probably 4 or 5 of us that played in virtually every single game that run. Like, there's something that will never take that away from those guys. If I saw Macca or Swins now, or Gwills, we'll still talk about it, and there's a remarkable bond, I would say, and maybe because of the age I was at and what that brought out of me that I'd never ever experienced before in a team sport like that. Like, it's quite remarkable, and I'd still feel like that now. If that team got back together, it'd be incredible, just as to see some of those blokes again, having gone through those emotions with them. It was crazy.
I went to Simon Gwillim's wedding a few years after, probably quite a few years after that. It wasn't that long ago, actually. But his best man made him run 22 yards. So he can do it. But it was, this is how it's affected everyone since, and that was probably, 10, 12, 13 years later after the event.
Well, I guess as you said, Statey, it's something that will always bond you guys together, on that trip. I think back to different close shaves that we've had together, Staunce and Statey, and because there's been so many quarterfinals, semi-finals, haven't gone the way. None of them stick out to me in the same way that this one does. Just from watching it rather than even playing. And hopefully, one day, the 4 of us will be able to sit in the stands at Lords and watch, a team from Bath, A, play in the final and B, win it. Do you think Staunce, that if you watched as someone who's played in 3 finals and got so close 3 times, do you think there would be a little part of you that kind of is jealous, envious, or if that does eventually happen?
No, because in all fairness, you want to see the club that you're passionate about achieve something. The time that I had, we had a core group of players who were, I think we were tight as a group, as friends and everything. I think that's what brought, in some ways, the best out of us, because we push each other. But at the end of the day, if the club went and achieved, went and won it, that's the ultimate goal. The whole time, the 3 finals I played, obviously I want to win, but I always wanted to be in the side that won it. I was grateful that I played 3, but I never achieved what I wanted to do, in the sense of winning a cup final. They were special moments, special years the whole time, when I look back at it. And it's just funny when you hear Statey used it as a motivator and things like that. I look back at all of them in different ways. Go, gee, if you hadn't misfielded that, if we hadn't done that, if we hadn't done this, because all three finals were so freaking close. That's the side I look back at times and go, yeah, how could we have done it better, or what could we have done it better? I just wonder, like, did we overthink it? Were we overconfident with it? I don't know. At the end of the day, it's still a special achievement. Like, when you look at it and go, 17 years later, no other team's done it within the club or even within the region. It just shows how good the group of players were at that time.
And after that, of course, Stacey went on to play for Gloucestershire at Lords, and took the wicket of Andrew Strauss. For you, did that kind of provide a bit of, a line in the sand for you, or is it just kind of another event that just didn't happen?
I think very different. Yeah, I don't want to play down making my first class debut at Lords and all that stuff was absolutely amazing, but it felt very separate from the experience of a Bath Cup final. So I don't think it didn't put anything to rest in one sense, because that was still something that will remain and was never going to change. So yes, going back there to play with a different team and a completely different setup was absolutely brilliant and was great. And I was very lucky in that sense, but I don't think it changed anything from looking back on 2003 perspective. And bizarrely, I thought you were going to actually mention was that I was run out. I was run out for naught when I played for Gloucester at Lords as well. So in slightly different but similar circumstances. So
you ruined that for me, Stacey, because I was just the closer.
So that's never going to change.
Well, listen,
but Stacey, in the final, you weren't run out, mate. It says not out on the scorecard.
Yeah, Squills wasn't run out. So.
Squills, mate.
Okay. I never knew that. That's it. I'm done.
You're happy with that.
That changes everything.
Get rid of that
photo. We're on episode 3 now, so I'm hoping that we've now reached all corners of the globe, and to the millions of listeners out there, I hope you've enjoyed this podcast. It's been a real fun trip down memory lane. I mean, these games that we're talking about each episode, they're special games, and bring back a lot of great memories. And the club being inclined the way it is, hopefully these occasions, these fixtures will keep coming up, and 20 years from now there'll be a whole host of other games to discuss. But Stacey, Staunce and Greg, thank you so much for spending time with me this morning or evening, as you are still in Australia. Next week we have got episode 4, which is going to be look at the 2015 quarter final away at Rothley. So Seb Benson's going to join me for that. Any sort of final words of wisdom from the captain, Greg Brown? What's your final takeaway from sort of the sort of weeks and months after that game?
Listen, it was as I tried to say before, it was something pretty special. To captain your mates at Lords was pretty special. I don't think it really hit me until probably November. I think I was on a golf course, and that's the other thing, that I'd actually stopped then. That was probably I'd stopped playing regularly after that. I put all my kit in the bin at Lords. Every single thing went in the bin, the whole lot. So for me to finish on that note was pretty special, and to finish with these guys was pretty cool. So thank you.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, guys, and take care of yourselves, and we'll speak again soon.
Thanks, Robin.
Cheers, everybody.
Thanks, lady.
See you next week.